Welcome to this episode of HBCU. This show is a platform to highlight all things HBCU. And joining me today on this episode are three highly successful and influential HBCU graduates. They have impacted so many lives and broken so many glass ceilings. First, we have G. Johnson, who attended Jackson State University in Jackson, Mississippi. Currently, she is the Senior Director at S&P Global Ratings. Next, we have Helen Dowdell, who attended the University of Arkansas, in Pine Bluff, Arkansas. Helen is the CEO of MUTW and Executive Officer at the DDA Law Firm. Last but certainly not least, we have Omarosa, who attended Howard University in Washington, D.C. Omarosa is currently the Chief Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer for my company, the P3 Group, Inc. Ladies, welcome to HBCU. I'm so glad to have you.
Thank you.
Dee, did you see my HBCU wave?
The homecoming queen wave?
I was Miss Central State.
Oh.
But oh, you went to so many HBCUs. So who you claiming today, oh?
Southern University. I'm currently a first-year law student at the Southern University Law Center in Baton Rouge, Louisiana.
Impressive. So look, today we have so much beauty and brains on the panel. We have actually two lawyers. You're sitting between two lawyers.
I'm in good company.
Absolutely. So G, I'll start with you. Tell us about your HBCU and your experience there and your journey to your current success.
Okay, my HBCU is Jackson State University. I attended as a math major, so I was a STEM major. And I left Jackson State and went to the Ohio State University College of Law, so that's how I ended up being an attorney. From there, I leveraged the law degree and did a federal judicial clerkship for 2 years in bankruptcy, and then used the bankruptcy experience in order to start my, my journey on Wall Street. And so I started as a structured finance analyst at S&P Global, is the name today. And I have been at S&P where I've had many opportunities beyond just being an analyst. And currently I am an analytical manager for a team, the Global Fund Ratings team. It's a team of 15 people. We sit on 3 different continents, so it's very exciting to be able to have that type of experience. And we are responsible for rating about $5 trillion in assets. And we have 15 people that rate $5.2 trillion in assets.
Whoa, that's impressive. Now, Omarosa, I don't know which HBCU which HBCU we're gonna start with, but you're gonna have to tell us about all of them.
I think it's important to start from the beginning.
Because, we don't want to leave nobody out.
First of all, it is such a pleasure to be on this
You heard of a twofer?
Panel.
Like a two for one? It's a pofer.
These ladies are remarkable, and it is an honor, truly, to meet both of you. But Dee, I always wanted to go to an HBCU, and there are 2 in Ohio. Wilberforce, Ohio, is one of the oldest, and Central State. And I was recruited to Central State University for volleyball as an athlete. I went there. I did 4 years. I did mention that the highlight of my career at Central State was becoming Miss Central State University. And as you probably know by now, I also wanted to go into television. And don't laugh at me, Dee, but I wanted to be a weather girl.
Really?
Yes. So my minor was in earth sciences, but I got into Howard University for my master's in doctoral studies. After my first year at Howard, I went to work at the White House, my first time at the White House. And, Howard University changes your lives, but fast forward to the pandemic, and of course, I'm at Southern. I also squeezed in a master's at Payne Theological, which is also in Wilberforce, which was my 4th HBCU.
Impressive. So Helen, I know you had a different path to your HBCU.
I did. I really did. And it's not because I wasn't exposed. I was very, exposed by my father. He attended an HBCU. My aunts and uncles, back when it was AM&N, he attended the University of Arkansas at Pine Bluff. He's an agricultural scientist. We're a farm family, so we were in a rural area, the Delta, Mississippi Delta on the Arkansas side. So I was exposed, decided to go in another path for some technical reasons. I didn't get my packet in time for the school that I really, really wanted to attend. So I ended up taking a different path, but it still led me back to our community, and I'm happy to have served and be a part of the HBCU community. I was exposed to a lot of different things in our culture. I was able to attend when I was younger, when my sister went to UAPB as well during homecomings and things of that nature. But and also my educational track also included me working, engineering a device, like we've spoken about before, in the traffic industry, about 107 years after Garrett Morgan, from what I'm told. And before that, I was working in the legal field. Our family owns a small boutique-style law firm. I worked as an executive officer running the marketing division. So very happy to do that, and now we're working in the traffic industry and breaking glass ceiling, so to speak, there.
Well, University of Arkansas Pine Bluff, Howard, Jackson State, who have the best band?
Howard University, no question. This segment is over, and this message is brought to you by Omarosa, Newman.
So I'm assuming y'all conceding that?
No,
Yes.
we're not. No, we're not. The best HBCU band is the Sonic Boom of the South.
Well, they say to save the best for last. Obviously, UAPB has one of the most phenomenal bands in the South as well.
So do you have to break the tie? Who's got the best band?
So let me say this.
Diplomacy is on its way.
So I've had UAPB have performed the P3 in the field at halftime.
Really?
Jackson State has formed the P3 in the field at halftime. Alcorn has done the P3 in the field at halftime. So it's a tie. It's a tie. But who have the best homecoming?
Oh, man.
Well, I'll tell you what. Talk to me about Jackson State homecoming, G. What is it like?
Oh, Jackson State's homecomings are the epitome of a family reunion. We celebrate not just the culture, but just the experiences that you had with that group of people where you attended. You get the opportunity to see older alumni come back, and it's a real, I can't even describe it other than to say it's a family reunion. And sometimes I do flinch when people say, oh, it's like an HBC homecoming. Nothing is like an HBCU homecoming.
Amen.
It is, and it also has personalities that are very particular to that school.
Right.
And so I understand, let's say, homecoming for all HBCUs, but the Jackson State experience is one, and that's why I say it's really like a family reunion.
G's going to be surprised. I'm going to totally agree with you. I went to my first Jackson State homecoming this year, and it was phenomenal. But I have to say that any one of the HBCU homecomings that you go have certain things that are in common. You're going to see classmates you haven't seen in a long time. If you're lucky, you see some professors that you adore. And you get to party in a way that you can at a PWI. So I haven't missed a Howard University homecoming until, of course, the pandemic. I always go back to Central State's homecoming because we have a Queen's reunion. We take the HBCU Queen thing quite seriously there. But I will say that this last homecoming was kind of very chill and mellow, and it did remind me of what's so important, and that's really the history of the institution. So we really focused on getting back to the roots of what the institution about, the historical nature, and we raised money and we served the community.
Helen?
Absolutely. I agree with both of these ladies here on the panel with me. HBCUs provide an exceptional, unique experience, and it really provides what you're missing in your life when it comes to like coming home. It reminds me like church on Easter Sunday. You're preparing, you're getting ready, you're presenting to be your best. You may skip a few Sundays in between, but when you get there, it's just like coming home. So I agree. Networking, relationships, getting to come back into, and as a business owner, to pour into a community. And it's also a sense of pride. You guys agree?
Yeah, certainly.
Like, it's esteemed. Like we carry so much throughout our years, and to be able to take that in a not necessarily a platform, but in a way where we can share it in a unique way is really beautiful.
Well, one of the things we want to highlight on the show is the fact that you all have graduated from HBCUs and you've gone on to do really magnificent things in your lives. And we want to highlight the fact that a lot of times when people of color are making decisions, HBCUs offer a unique opportunity for you to find a place to really find yourself and get grounded, to be in an atmosphere of community and camaraderie that you can't get at larger majority institutions. But I want to highlight each of your current careers. And so, G, you're currently a senior director at a global credit rating agency, S&P Global Ratings. Talk to me about what you do there on a daily basis.
In my current role, I am a manager of a team. What we do as a company is we provide credit ratings. And so when people ask me, well, what exactly is that? I liken it to a FICO score. We put, for lack of a better term, a FICO score on companies. And we do that on a global basis. We provide opinions. So they are opinions generally for debt of our assessment of an issuer's willingness and ability to repay their debt in full and on time, which is akin to a FICO score. We also do a lot of outreach. And so when I say outreach, I mean we're talking to the market, because we understand that the publications that we provide are giving critical information for investors to be able to make decisions. And we do a lot of public speaking. And so, we're on the road in order to make sure that not only we are visible so people can ask us questions, but that we can give those opinions and have real-time conversations. Right.
Now, in addition to your full-time job, you serve as the chair of Jackson State Development Foundation, which serves a critical role in helping provide educational opportunities for people of color and supporting the university goals and objectives. Talk to me about that position.
That position came about, I felt like it was a time in my life to do some estate planning, and so I went to my attorney and we were talking through some different things, and I decided I wanted to give a large endowment from my estate to Jackson State. And from there, my name was provided to the board at that time. And we had several conversations, and I felt like I was at a point in my life where I could give back to Jackson State in such a substantial manner. And so I've been on the board since 2017, and this past July, I was appointed as the board chair. And what we do is we provide governance and oversight over our endowment, which is almost at $40 million. We work very closely with the university to make sure that the strategic plan of the foundation is aligned with the strategic plan of the university. And ultimately what we're trying to do is to make sure that children have the opportunity, or students have the opportunity to complete their education without the financial burden stopping them from going.
Absolutely. So, you serve as the Chief Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer at one of the best places to work in America, the P3 Group. And of course, you wear so many different hats. You are producer, I mean, in your own rights, but also for me as well. But you wear a lot of hats for us. But talk about your role at the P3 Group. And
I think that it's important to tell folks about my journey to the P3 Group. My background is in real estate, which was highlighted on the many shows that I've done in my career. But the work that you're doing is so aligned to what I'm doing. When I left the White House and I oversaw historically Black colleges and universities, and I had an opportunity to interact with all the HBCU presidents, but also looking at infrastructure in this country and the impact on the African American community and inner city communities was also a very close passion project for me. So then enter Dee Brown, CEO, and it's a marriage of all the things that I love to do, from the development, the real estate, but also your commitment to historically Black colleges and universities. One of the things that Dee does that made me want to, be a part of this wonderful organization is that he gives back in ways that people don't think about. There's an initiative he has called 10 grand for your band. And Dee, I don't know the history of it, but it's one of my favorite things that we do at P3. What's the history of it, though?
I came up with an idea around 3:30 a.m. and I said, let me try this. And so Jackson State was the first band I tried it on. We contacted the band director and said, hey, if I give you $10,000 directly to the band, will you perform at halftime P3 in the middle of the field? He said, when can I get a check?
But people often forget about the financial need.
Well, that's the interesting part about the whole concept. The band is the most critical part of the HBCU experience, right? Without the band, the HBCU experience would not be the same.
The band is the soul.
Yeah, it's so true.
The soul. It's the soul of the school. But it's always underfunded, right? They always have limited resources. And so I saw the 10 grand for your band as an opportunity for us to partner with bands and promote the P3 brand, but also provide an infusion of capital to an area that's vital to the HBCU experience. So that's kind of how it all came together.
And everybody gets so excited about it, but particularly the students. Another initiative that he does, and I think it's really key for all of us if you've lived in the dorms on the different campuses, P3 builds dorms that are modern and efficient, that students can have a good experience while they're on campus. I could tell stories about being at Central and not having the best heat or lights or whatever, but that was part of the experience. Dee Brown has said that doesn't have to be a part of the experience, that we can provide quality housing in academic settings on these HBCUs that will have students saying, I really enjoyed my time on this campus, and I had great living accommodations. So he's made a commitment to do that. But one of the things that I think is most needed, and I won't take all the time, but I could talk about P3 all day, is really the representation in the space of development and in real estate and construction. Less than 3% of those working in construction are African American. P3 has made a commitment to increase those numbers, not just kind of in a gesture, but in a sustainable way, to make sure that we have an opportunity to impact building and developing in this country. And when you think about that, it's a no-brainer, but when you work with D3, I said D3, that's actually your grandbaby. When you work with Dee Brown CEO, it's something that's constant throughout the work that we do. So I could go on and on, but I won't hog the time. But one of the greatest honors for me is working for someone who has a vision for making an impact in this country in ways that people haven't thought about, including sitting on this panel on a program that I have never seen, a program dedicated to telling the stories of historically Black colleges. Have you?
No.
Have you?
Never.
Neither have I. So this, in and of itself, is historical.
Thank you.
So thank you.
Now, Helen, you are an inventor.
Absolutely.
And I want you to talk about your invention for us.
Thank you. I'm so moved by Omarosa right now. I'm trying not to get emotional.
My twin sister.
I'm hearing her speak. It's so beautiful, speaking about infrastructure and opportunities, because it's essential. Exposure is essential. Infrastructure improvements are essential. So what you're doing here is transformational, and it's groundbreaking. We always come into companies, I always say this because we've given back to HBCUs in an exceptional way, scholarships. And when I was in school, I was non-trad. My parents, you only need one incident to happen that can change your financial future for most families who come from areas who have compromised socioeconomics. And I was that. I had working parents, they worked very hard, but we still had gaps, lack of resources. So what you're doing is so phenomenal. Some of the best talent in the world, the brightest minds in the world, come from some of the most rural places. Our HBCUs, they go to companies, and we advance companies in a way like no other.
Right.
No one else can do it. If you come from the HBCU, you get in at a new position at your job, I can almost assure you that talent is going to knock that opportunity out of the ballpark. Oh, yeah. So what you're presenting is an opportunity for us to expand. But yes, my company, I ended up working in the traffic industry after, this is very simple, I witnessed a accident of someone who was in a wheelchair trying to cross in an intersection. When I say witnessed, I read the newspaper and it was right around the corner from my law firm. And anyway, I was just unsettled about it. Long story short, I had an idea. I feel like it was divinity, it was divine. Sketched out this idea. Bumped into a young girl that was an engineering student at a Staples or something like that who was working for the city engineering department. I said, hey, I'm gonna give you this idea because I feel like people in wheelchairs should not be compromised in this way, and we should be protecting the most vulnerable part of our country. People with disabilities are the #1 minority group in the world. And found out some other information through that trek that caused me to engineer a device that integrates into our existing traffic signal that will save the lives of people with disabilities and give them an opportunity to cross in crosswalks. We work land, sea, and air. So we work with FAA. We're having some framework that we're putting together for SEED to make places accessible. That's something that we don't necessarily think about in our everyday life and something that we call an oversight. So even though I'm not an engineer, I engineered a device, and what we talk about with my company as far as our STEM and working with HBCUs, small change, big impact. Don't be intimidated by not having an opportunity and confusing that with not having the talent to create and make a contribution. So you take that small change, and if it's impactful, you can turn that into something like I ended up, starting creating a traffic signal and then signage for accessibility. That's something that we needed in our country. If you think about ADA, it was passed back in 1990. And if you think about traffic intersections, and usually when I talk to people, they start looking at traffic intersections completely different. They're like, Helen, every time I drive to a traffic signal, I cannot stop thinking about what happened. But we lose about 528 wheelchair users per year fatally in crosswalks. 70% of accidents occur in intersections. And when Garrett Morgan, which, you guys know the story, he created the gas mask, but he also created the traffic signal. And it was after there was a collision with a horse-drawn carriage and a motor vehicle. And so now that we have people included in this population, crosswalks were invented 70 years ago, and at that time, wheelchair users were pretty much confined to their homes. Now with science and technology and medicine, people are living independently. And then we found out as well that our product protected the blind pedestrians. They were like, hey, you know what? We're being hit too because, we have this countdown, but it's just telling us how much time we have to cross. It really gives the power back to the person that's at the crosswalk. And also land, sea, air, airlines, crossing areas. If you think about an able-bodied person, when we go to the grocery store, we go and we park, we walk across the street. An independent person who's a wildestrian, that's a word that we've coined. We adapted that word from the word pedestrian. We remember taking Latin in school. It was a lot of fun. Pedi is Latin for foot. So pedestrian is not an adaptable term for a wheelchair user. So we coined the word wildestrian to define what a wheelchair user is. And we also are integrating the international symbol for accessibility that's synonymous with inclusion in our signage to make sure that we have a world that's inclusive. It's not just about here in the United States, but it's about internationally. So that's what we do at Mobility Unlimited Technology Worldwide.
Wow, that is so
awesome. Wow, yeah, very, very awesome. And people don't think about, I've never thought about it until you and I talked that, and you see it all the time, individuals in wheelchairs out crossing the streets, and they're mobile now, where, like you said, historically you thought about someone being in a wheelchair being confined or only moving when they had someone pushing them around, but now with the electric wheelchair and all of that, they're out, and that's very good technology that you have brought to the market. So great.
Brilliant.
But I want to pivot back to HBCUs for just a minute. I want to hear just really about when you were on the yard. That's what, at HBCUs is all about, the yard, right? So what was it like on the yard, G, when you were at Jackson State University?
It was magnificent. You can tell that one of my greatest experiences were those 4 years at Jackson State. It's not just about homecoming. It's about, again, it's about that family. It's the camaraderie of everything. One of the things that I do remember about Jackson State is you know, my parents went to Jackson State as well, and they went in the 60s when the civil rights movements were very turbulent, particularly in the state of Mississippi. And so I'd heard all of the stories. And by the time I got to Jackson State, you know, many years later, we had a challenge of inequitable funding, which we spoke about. And so one of the things that they call for is for students to come and do a sit-in. And, you know, I'm a very avid reader of the modern civil rights movement, and I just thought that was my opportunity to lend myself to an inequity. And so it ended up being, it was a legal case called the Ayers case, and the case went all the way up to the Supreme Court. The HBCUs in Mississippi won that case, and there was to be allocation of dollars from the legislature in order to try and to rectify some of that historical funding.
Right.
The thing I like the most about it, to be able to connect what happened at Jackson State when I attended versus today, is that some of that money ended up coming into the foundation, and I ended up being on the board at a time when we had to put policies in place to provide proper governance over it. So just a full circle moment for me.
Wow. Omarosa, we're going to come back to your answer on part 2, but this is the end of part 1 with G, Omarosa, and Helen. You tune in next week, and we'll be back with these 3 lovely ladies. And thank you for watching. Without you, there's no me.